Hello, everyone. We are going to get started now. My name is Anita Ramachandran, and I'll be your host for today's conversation. I'm the executive director of MicroMentor, a social venture of Mercy Corps and one of the world's largest online communities of entrepreneurs and volunteer business mentors. I've had the privilege of being a Mercy Corps team member for the last 8 years, and I'm excited to be having this conversation. Before we begin and meet Tjada, a few quick notes and logistics. Some of the questions I'll ask today were previously submitted by supporters like you. If additional questions come up during this conversation, we'll do our best to answer those, either in the chat or in our conversation itself. So before we begin this conversation that I've been so thrilled and honored to be doing, a quick introduction to Mercy Corps' new CEO, Tjada McKenna, who took over the reins as Mercy Corps' Chief Executive Officer just under a month ago. Tjada has grounded her career in the simple belief that no matter where someone is born, no matter where they live, they should be able to lead a thriving and successful life. As Chief Executive Officer of Mercy Corps, Tjada leads a global team of nearly 5,600 humanitarians who provide immediate relief to save lives and livelihoods and to work to create transformational change benefiting 37 million people in more than 40 countries around the world. Tjada spent more than a decade working to end world hunger in roles with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the US government before serving as COO for Habitat for Humanity and most recently as COO for CARE. Tjada also brings a passion for innovation to her work, something that I'm very excited about, and that she developed early in her career through various roles at McKinsey & Company, American Express, and General Electric. When she's not working, Tjada tells us that she enjoys reading, exercising, spending time with her husband, Joe, and chasing their two young boys. Tjada, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Anita. It is a real pleasure to be here with all of you.
Well, Tjada, we're going to get started and jump right into issues that are front and center for a lot of us. And one thing that's front and center for so many of us globally, as you know well, is COVID-19. It has disrupted the life and work of so many people around the world. What are your reflections on the impact of COVID-19 for the people we serve and the work that we do?
Yeah, COVID has been particularly humbling. You know, we're used to surging to where we're needed. And in this case, all of us are affected and all of us are living with COVID day to day. And it's a real reminder of how vulnerable we all are and how much we use our resilience. But of course, certain populations remain much more vulnerable than others. And that's where we are. Very early on in the crisis, I was talking to some of our team members in West Africa as we were trying to get people information and telling them to shelter and what was ahead. And there was a woman in West Africa who said to our team, am I really supposed to let my family starve over a cough? And I think that really brought it home to us in terms of just vulnerability and how COVID is another layer of challenges in people's lives. So as it has spread across the world and reached out to the more vulnerable, we're starting to see that. Like the UN has estimated that this pandemic could push another 132 million people to the brink of starvation. And it's just reminded us that our work is needed more than ever, and we're drawing on our experiences around delivering water and sanitation and helping with food provisions and just being in communities and able to stop disinformation, to continue to do our work and to continue to support people and communities through this crisis.
Thank you, Tjada. And perhaps the next issue that is top of mind for many of us here in the United States, and really to a large extent globally as well, is the US presidential elections. Joe Biden is now the president-elect. How do you hope Mercy Corps will work with the next administration?
It's been a wild week as an American. So look, we are a nonpartisan organization and maintain a laser focus on our mission. And obviously the U.S. government has been a great partner to us, and we eagerly work with all administrations. So we'll continue through the end of the Trump administration. And we look forward to working with the new administration with our same goals of always building a more peaceful, secure, and just world. And we really hope that this new administration We'll take this opportunity to reassert American leadership in resolving some of the most pressing issues of our times, especially including climate change and the high levels of global displacement and conflict that are just being exacerbated by COVID right now.
Absolutely, Tjada. And just in this early part of our conversation, it's evident that people around the world are experiencing somewhat unique circumstances today. What do you see as the biggest challenges and opportunities for Mercy Corps and the international aid sector overall over this next coming year?
Yeah, I think in an ideal world, we all see ourselves in this sector as ultimately trying to work ourselves out of a job. I mean, obviously, there will always be populations that are suffering from a natural disaster or other things. But I think this whole period has reminded us that our work is now more necessary than it ever was, and that we have to double down. So one of our challenges right now as aid organizations is kind of in the midst of all of us struggling to remind people and to get the word out there that there are populations that are more vulnerable, where this is more drastic and still deserving of our support. And the other thing that we all have to keep in mind is that as a country, as any of us, we're only as strong as our weakest link. And this is a global pandemic; it knows no borders, and so it's also still a national security imperative and a safety issue for us to really be worried about everyone. So we've got to tell that story to people. We've got to tell it in relevant ways, and we've got to motivate people to still think about that. I think on the opportunity side, this is who Mercy Corps is. We are resilient, we are agile. Because of the experience of our team and the dedication of our team, we have found new ways of working. We have increased and really localized. Obviously, our carbon footprint is down, and we will keep that. But really focusing, we've been very creative, and so holding on to that, making sure that we continue on that path, and kind of looking ahead to us being an even more effective organization, as this has forced us to be in this time. So we are watching and listening and making sure that we're learning and keeping some of the positive effects of it as well.
At Mercy Corps, Tjada, I have always been very proud to say this. We've said that we're committed to helping people build secure, productive, and just communities. Justice seems to be a topic on many of our minds lately.
Yeah.
How can organizations like Mercy Corps and our supporters contribute to the creation of a more just world?
And I think we've been reminded of our interconnectedness so much in these past few months. And we believe, that's one of our core principles, as you said, is driving towards a more just world. So for us, and then I think for our sector and for others, it really means listening to people. I think we've learned that a bit in the US and in Europe in this crisis. Like, we've really got to listen to people, listen to communities about what they need and what's important to them and where they are feeling injustice in their lives, not where we believe that's happening, but where those communities that we see really suffering more are feeling it. And we've got to ask ourselves kind of, how do we take action? How do we work to create a more just world? That could be little things like, donating $5 a month, but it also could be like, going, participating in protest or writing letters to people, or, depending on whatever people's strengths are, thinking of ways to use their strengths to create more opportunities for people. And that could even be someone volunteering in their local school. But I think we are all advocates. We are all part of this world together, and kind of living in that way is something that we will continue to do. And Mercy Corps, we thrive when people are connected, when we can connect the people to the work, and we will continue to try to do that, to bring people together and to really show them the communities and the families where we work, and to show our similarities and how we're more alike than different.
That's so true. I think that we can never highlight that enough, is how much we are more similar than we are different. Well, another topic that's certainly very dear to me, and I know that it is important for many of our supporters, is diversity in leadership, because we know that it is diversity in leadership means diversity in thought and opinion, which is so important in tackling today's challenges.
Yeah.
What can we do as a sector and at Mercy Corps to address the lack of racial and ethnic diversity at the leadership level? This is a pressing problem, and I think I'd love to see what your take is on this.
Yeah. This is very much a systems issue that our sector is facing, and something that we have not tackled as head on as other sectors. But I still think other sectors still have a lot of work to do, right? So over time, our work has evolved, and thinking about our work, we just have a history where we may have biases towards certain experiences, like people who've been to certain schools, who speak certain languages, who've had these certain overseas requirements. And those can create these systems issues over time where you just have these barriers that have been lifted up for people who don't share those same experiences. And the fact is, we are worse off as a sector for not having all that diversity of opinion and experiences to help inform our work. So we need to take a hard look every single step of the way. And for us, it's even more imperative. I mean, for us to have credibility and to serve and to be good partners, we've got to reflect the areas where we work, and we've got to reflect all of our locations, whether that be in Portland, Oregon, or in Ethiopia and Addis Ababa. And so I think while we've made great progress on the local level, there's still a lot of work to do on the leadership level. And that starts with us. It starts from the top down and permeates through. And it starts with our boards, and it starts with other organizations. We have to hold ourselves accountable, but other partners have to hold us accountable as well. So it's something that it's a system that we've got to dismantle and rebuild in a more inclusive way. And it takes action, and it's going to push us outside of our comfort zones. If we're not uncomfortable at some parts of this, then we're not doing it well.
Yeah, I was recently having a conversation about how change really is when you're feeling uncomfortable, and you're sitting in that discomfort is really when almost all change occurs when you're able to sit in that discomfort. Yes. And almost embrace that to a certain extent.
Yes.
To happen.
Yes, you have to. And it goes back to some of the things we're talking about that are different about being resilient and about kind of preparing us for uncertain things. Like we've got to be forced to be uncomfortable, because that's the way that we are going to evolve as a sector. And that's the only way that we're going to look different. It's the only way that we're going to act different. And we'll be better off for it. We absolutely will be better off for it.
Absolutely. For one thing, we at Mercy Corps are so thrilled to have you at the helm, leading us, and sort of guiding us through this next phase of and maybe even setting the course for the industry. Mm-hmm. So thank you for that. Well, I know that we've talked about COVID and some pressing issues, but they by no means are all of the pertinent and pressing issues that the world is seeing. So today. Yet I'm, if you don't mind, I'm going to shift our conversation to a more personal level. Okay. I know that, personally, there were key defining moments in my life that led me to make the decision to join Mercy Corps. Mm-hmm. Like you, I was in the corporate sector. I worked in the nonprofit sector, and then, there were many things that contributed to me making this decision. But it's been a good one for sure. My run at for 8 years has been really wonderful and rewarding. I'm curious to learn about a moment, if there was one, or a decision that put you on the path to where you are today.
I really stumbled into this. I had very grand ambitions coming out of college of ultimately running a big Fortune 500 company one day. I loved big organizations. I liked business. So the summer after I graduated from college, before I started my first job, I did a volunteer work in Southern Africa. And of course, like all these good things, I got more out of it than I gave. But it was a wonderful experience. And I ended up visiting a nearby area in Malawi, where some friends were living near there. And I remember sitting with a group of women in a community, and there was a woman who looked to be my age, and she looked a lot like me in terms of skin color and everything. And she had a baby, and the baby kept like patting her breast and trying to go for more milk. And her breast was was very shriveled, for lack of a better word. And it was clear that the baby was kind of kept pressing and kept going, trying to get something that wasn't there. And I don't know that I could articulate it at that moment, but I was looking at hunger and malnutrition in that moment. There had been droughts in the area, and it just haunted me. So when I went to start my kind of first job out of college, which happened to be at a consulting firm, McKinsey and Company in Chicago, when I talk to people, when partners or other people would say, "What are you interested in?" I'd say, like, I just want to be a great businesswoman, but I'm also really I'm interested in African economic development. I'm not sure what that means, but I'd love to figure out how to use the skills that I'm building here to ultimately be of service there. And being in the Chicago office, one of the partners said, "You should start working on some of our agriculture clients, because we're here in the Midwest and agriculture is very related to development." And I didn't know enough to know that that was true. And so from there, he brought me into some projects, and I really, that kind of started me off, but I really got to see how agriculture and food was so interconnected to so many issues like education and health and people's prosperity and their ability to thrive. And it just set me down a path that I just never resisted. And so I love being able to bring some of the skills that I've honed in the private sector and that business way of thinking into thinking about how do we advance and make the world a more just and equal place in ways that are sustainable and that are lasting and that work within kind of the market economies that a lot of us sit in.
Well, I'm glad that your path eventually brought you here to Mercy Corps, and that we both are sitting here having this conversation today.
Yeah.
It was it wasn't something that I thought I was going to do with Mercy Corps. So, well, someday we'll share that story.
I'd love to hear it.
But speaking of a personal level conversation, I wouldn't miss this opportunity to ask you about a topic that's very near and dear to my heart.
Mm-hmm.
As I mentioned to our supporters and to you, I lead MicroMentor within Mercy Corps, and it's about the power of mentoring to transform lives. I believe in it. I'm passionate about it, which is why we're looking to have hundreds of thousands of people have access to a mentor, particularly a business mentor. I'd love to hear from you, Tjada. Have you had any mentors in your personal or professional life who've changed your life in a significant way? How did you go about finding them? What was it like? Give us a little glimpse on how mentoring has helped you.
I've been blessed and fortunate to have so many mentors in life. And what I say to people when they ask this question is mentorship is a journey. And so, most of my great mentors have come from peers who've evolved to do other things or former bosses. And I think really keeping in touch with people and seeing how they evolve. And sometimes you don't realize what you're learning from someone at that moment until years later when you reflect. So, some of my greatest mentors have been people that I've met doing this work. I was very fortunate to work with Catherine Bertini, who was a former executive director of the World Food Program, who really reoriented that organization to think about women and girls and really advanced our thinking about the importance of women in development. And at the time, I was very much a blank slate on the topic, and just working with her and seeing her operate really changed me. Another person who happened to also later become an executive director of the World Food Program, Earther and Cousin, really showed me a lot about just how to own your strength and how to live into who you are. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my dear friend and former colleague, Raj Shah. I worked with him over a decade. He's the head of the Rockefeller Foundation, but I worked with him for over a decade at the Gates Foundation and then at USAID together running Lead the Future. And to be able to kind of see someone grow in their own career over a period and to kind of go back and forth is really an amazing opportunity. So I really encourage people to just look at where you are and take advantage of all the wonderful people around you and in your space and really soak up as much as possible and keep in touch with people, because there are people in your life now that will end up being your mentors, and you have no idea at that time that may happen.
Absolutely. And for those who may not have those circles and that social capital is why MicroMentor exists.
Yes,
At
yes.
the expense of making a plug for MicroMentor, it
Yeah.
is, social capital is so key, and
It is so
it's
key.
much
And
of,
sometimes you'll meet people when they don't have social capital.
yeah,
That's where it's been amazing to see people that were classmates or there were other things as they've evolved into their own
yeah.
power or what they were supposed to do in the world, to be able to watch that and to be on that journey with them. And so you're right, MicroMentor is so important, and the ability to build that social capital, and then that introduces you to others that kind of keep expanding your own circle of thoughts and energy.
Absolutely. It's always exciting for me to hear about a mentorship journey. So thank you for indulging me in that
No,
conversation.
thank you. Thank you.
Well, and Jada, based on your personal experience, what advice would you give other women who are interested in pursuing the path to leadership? As you well know, it's not
Yeah.
one that is straightforward for women. But what are some ways they can address societal norms, expectations that might stand in their way? This is, as you can imagine, also another topic that's very dear to my heart.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say about it.
Each of us has our own path, and some of this is very cultural. There's a cultural context in it. So what has worked for me is really learning how to use my voice and to speak up. I gave the example earlier of just mentioning to a partner, these are the things I'm interested in, right? Like I believe if you speak it into the universe, you never know what people know or don't know. So speaking up, but also just in meetings, I learned that, early on in my career, I'd often be like the only Black person in the room or the only woman. And I was tempted to be quiet. And when I was working at American Express, Ken Chenault, who was one of the few Black American CEOs of a Fortune 500 company at that time, had this lunch with him, and he said to a group of people, he said, I was always the only Black person in the room, and I realized like people were going to remember what I said because I am that person, so I might as well use it and speak up. And I've always kept that in the back of my mind. I think speaking up, if you say something dumb, like you said it, and keep going and keep talking, and something amazing will come out of your mouth at some point. And I think also to the extent that you can, building relationships with people, and just volunteering and being there. The other thing I would say is just to be careful not to stereotype yourself in typical roles. So I try, sometimes people think of things like womanly duties of taking notes or being the person to organize the meeting, and I tend to try, obviously I'm always happy to step up and do any of that, but I always, at a certain point in my career, I always had to make sure that I wasn't given those things by default because of who I am. Right. So I think being very conscious of how you're showing up and what people may be subconsciously asking you to do, and pushing back against that in your own way is really important. But I fully acknowledge that those are things that may be more advantageous in a very Western context.
Right. Yeah, I've had similar experiences where I've been in a room full of male colleagues, and it's sometimes hard to get a word in edgewise. So it's certainly a good reminder that you're giving us, and addressing some of the societal norms, much of which is ingrained even in us.
Yes, no, we take it on, and I think sometimes is when we're like, oh, I want to be helpful. Like, of course I'll do it, of course. And there are just so many ways that we can be helpful, right? And so just being mindful of ways to use those instincts to our advantage, I think.
Absolutely. Well, Tjada, I could ask you so many questions about getting to know you better at this level, but we'll pause that and maybe turn course again towards to looking ahead at the future, and both at our sector and for Mercy Corps. What are you most looking forward to in your time with Mercy Corps? And I know that we have partners and supporters that are tuning in. It would be great for us to hear from you what you're looking forward to.
I've long admired Mercy Corps. It's one of the great actors in our sector, and it's always been known for being agile and innovative, but also just having a really deep presence in communities where it worked. So I'm looking forward to getting to know the team, getting to understand that spirit, and seeing all of our great work and meeting our teams. I'm eager to get more people to know about Mercy Corps. I think in our sector, people come to us for advice, that they know who we are, but we are humble, kind of agile, nimble people that quietly do our work. And so I can't wait to expose more people to the amazing work of Mercy Corps. And when it's safe to travel again, I just can't wait to hit the ground and meet our teams in Afghanistan or Ethiopia or the country of Georgia. And I'm really looking forward to that. It's a bit awkward not to be able to travel, but everyone has adapted so well to virtual learning. And there is an upside to that, in that right now, because we are all virtual, I'm just as likely to talk to our country director in Nigeria as I am to a team member who sits in Portland. So I'm really trying to embrace that and take advantage of that.
You know, when and you probably have heard this as well. When someone joins the team, you know, or an organization new, we always say that the first 2 months they're soaking it all in, and they're sort of the best people to get impressions without being clouded by, you know, becoming part of the institution, so to speak. So, what are your first impressions of Mercy Corps, and what excites you?
I am struck by how eager and hungry the team is, right? Like you enter different organizations, and sometimes there's an energy of people, oh, I've been there before, I've been doing this for X, I know what I'm doing. A lot of my conversations with the team, people are constantly saying, what can we do better? How do we do this? What have you seen there? Just there is a freshness there. There's an eagerness there, but also that word hunger keeps coming back to my mind, because there's a drive to just keep doing more and doing it better, and thinking about how to do that. And so we're really in a sweet spot, in that we are big enough to really advance things at scale, but not so big that we're clunky or that we're set in our ways. And I think looking at how people interact, I really do see that nimbleness, and I see this growth still happening in terms of the way that we do things.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest assets we have, I can speak just personally as a team member, is my colleagues around me. That passion and dedication certainly comes through. Well, what gives you hope for the future? We talked at the early part of this conversation about, you know, some of the many pressing issues that our world is facing today. What gives you hope for the future, Tjada?
A few things, and I think this time of COVID has actually really helped bring it to the fore. One is just this next generation of youth behind that's coming up behind us. They're interconnected in ways that we never were before, and they're hungry, and they just won't settle for the status quo. So I think there's an energy and a knowledge and an awareness that's really going to help leapfrog some things in the next generation in different contexts, and I'm excited about that. The other thing, which is one of Mercy Corps' things that I've already gotten to participate in, is around innovation and bringing new things to the table. So technology is no silver bullet. One of the first things I did when I joined was participated in a Ripple conference around digital currencies. And the fact that there are so many new technologies coming, and that people that otherwise aren't engaged in our work are thinking about how could those serve different populations, and our ability to provide an evidence base for that, to make sure that there are things that can benefit people or to help people tweak what they're thinking of, I think is really boundless, and I think we are uniquely good at that. And I in doing that, and in seeing that, and in speaking at a few of the conferences since I've been here, I do think there's an increasing sense of that social responsibility, and people looking to, like, where can I use my strength to expand something for other people. And that is a perfect place for us to really work with lots of different people. And I think we're quite good at partnership and pulling that in. So I'm excited to take those things forward and to see what we can do with all those elements.
Well, it is, you talked a little bit about opportunities and challenges. Every day have to remind myself that even in the midst of all of this, we are faced, with lots of opportunities to do things differently, better, more thoughtfully. And so I appreciate, you bringing in the interconnectedness of how we work together. Big part of my role was to be, traveling, meeting mentors and entrepreneurs around the world, really bringing this online community, making it real, was when I could be on the ground and meeting our colleagues around the world. It's I'm looking forward to the day when it's going to be safe to travel. Once it is, I know you touched a little bit on this, Tjada, but are there particular countries or regions that you're especially looking forward to seeing where Mercy Course programming is in action?
Yeah, I'm excited to see as much of it as I can, as quickly as I can. Every day I hear about some new project or some effort that we're doing, and I think, oh, I can't wait to go dig in. I think, even recently someone was telling me about an effort that we have in East Africa, where we're providing like digital data for these farm communities in Kenya and other places that are dealing with not only weather, but the locusts that have arrived, right? I saw that on the news, like locust swarms in East Africa. And the fact that we are helping people kind of predict where they are and get the tools that they need for that seemed really very interesting. But look, we have wonderful programs all over the world, some in our backyard right here in the Bahamas or Puerto Rico, and others farther afield like Syria. And I'm just eager to get to as much of it as I can, because they're all different. They're all kind of really grounded in what that community needs at one point. And there will be some common threads of what Mercy Corps uniquely brings to those that I'm eager to kind of compare and contrast along the way.
Yeah, this is, I don't think I would have said I really miss being on an airplane.
Yeah.
But
it
is hard, but it's certainly, being grounded and staying home has also had its benefits.
Yeah.
Like you said, meeting our colleagues from all over the world, reducing that distance bias, sort of leveling the playing field, so to speak, in terms of being able to stay connected. Yet it doesn't replace the human connection.
Yes.
Meeting people in person. Well, Tjada, this has been such an amazing conversation. I have felt so honored to be able to introduce you to the world. Thank you for sharing your time and insights with us today. And, thank you to everyone for joining us. If, I'm not sure if you were able to share any of your questions, but we'll certainly take a look at it. We'll take a look at the comments after this event, and we'll do our best to answer them. Tjada, once again, a big warm welcome to you from all of us, team members, supporters from around the world.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you for being such an amazing conversation partner. And for those of you watching, thank you for engaging. And I look forward to working with you and bringing you into the Mercy Corps fold if you aren't already, and to continuing to share our work with you. So thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for joining us, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Perfect. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.